Well, I'm excited to bring the first message of our new series to you this morning. We're going to park here for the next couple of months. And if you're new to our church, we're this whole year exploring what it means to be the family of faith. So our theme for the year is We Are Family. And over every couple of months, we've been exploring some of the different relationship dynamics, both in our natural families and in the family of faith. And so first of all, we explored what it means to be sons and daughters of the living God, of the one true God, our first and primary identity as people and as believers in the family of faith. And then we've just been through brothers and sisters, and boy, that was a challenging series, wasn't it? Where we kind of learnt that when you say yes to Jesus and you become part of the family of faith, then all the other believers that you're called to do life and community with in the local church, they become your spiritual brothers and sisters, which means you can't keep fighting with them all the time. You've got to learn how to get on with them. So that was a challenging series, and today we're going to launch a series which is all about mothers and fathers. Now, don't despair if you are not a physical or biological mother or father. The Lord has something for you too, because what we are going to unpack is that not only has God put leadership structures in place in the family, in the home, with physical and biological mothers and fathers in families and households, but He's also put into place divine structures and leadership for the family of faith. And so all of those who are part of the family of faith, you may be a spiritual child right now, you might be in your infancy in your spiritual walk or in your following of Jesus, but God has put you here in the family of faith so that you can learn and be discipled by those who are more mature in their walk with Jesus. And all of us are somewhere on that journey. So we're going to have a great time together hearing about what it means to be parents, mothers and fathers in the family of faith. I've called today's message the parenting imperative. And it's a strong word, but parenting is vitally important, not just in your family, but in the family of faith. It is imperative that we hear from the Lord about how to become great mothers and fathers. And so we've got a couple of long passages that we're going to read today, but strap in, they're interesting stories. And this first passage that we're going to read today is from 1 Samuel, the book of 1 Samuel chapter 7, which in the New Living Translation, which I'll be reading from today, has the heading, Samuel leads Israel to victory. All right, so all those people that have been bringing their paper Bibles, flick through the pages and try and remember the order of the books of the Bible. Those who've got the digital Bibles will just go straight there. And let me set up this passage for you. The context of this passage is that the people of God, the community of Israel, they did something very bad. This is a common part of their story. They did something very bad. They did something that the Lord didn't ask them to do, and they were frightened of their enemies. And so what they did to think that they were going to beat their enemies was they took the Ark of the Covenant, which is representative of the presence of God, from the tabernacle, which is where it's meant to stay, meant to be, and they took it into battle with them because they thought that that would mean that they would win the battle. God never asked them to do it, but they did it. And as a consequence, the Ark of the Covenant from the tabernacle got stolen, and it was in enemy hands. And so at this time, in the history of the people of God, it is where priests, prophets, and now judges, we'll look into what that means in a minute, are the people called to bring leadership to the community or the family of faith. And Samuel is one of those such people. So we're going to pick it up and find out what happens next. The people come to Israel and they're saying, what do we do? We've sinned in the Lord's eyes. The Ark of the Covenant has been stolen. What do we do? Samuel is their spiritual leader. So then Samuel said to all the people of Israel, if you want to return to the Lord with all your hearts, get rid of your foreign gods and your images of Ashtoreth. That's just another god. Turn your hearts to the Lord and obey Him alone. Then he will rescue you from the Philistines." So the Israelites did what their leader told them. They got rid of their images of Baal and Ashtoreth and worshipped only the Lord. Then Samuel gave them another instruction. He said, "Gather all of Israel, the whole community, the whole church, come together, the whole family, to Mizpah, and I will pray to the Lord for you." So, again, they did what their leader told them. They gathered at Mizpah and in a great ceremony drew water from a well and poured it out before the Lord. Just another kind of offering, drawing water up from a well. It was hard work, and pouring it out before the Lord. That's a costly sacrifice. They also went without food all day, fasted, and confessed that they had sinned against the Lord. And it's in brackets in my version. It says it was at Mizpah. It's in this place that Samuel became Israel's judge. That's the appointed leader of the community, the God-appointed leader of the community. So when the Philistine rulers, that's their enemies, heard that Israel had gathered at Mizpah, they mobilized their army and advanced. They're thinking, this is a good opportunity for us to defeat these people because they're all together in one place at one time. The Israelites were badly frightened when they learned that the Philistines were approaching. So they said, they're begging Samuel, "Don't stop pleading with the Lord our God to save us from the Philistines. Don't stop, Samuel. You're the God-appointed person. We've done everything that you've told us to do. Please don't stop." So Samuel took a young lamb and offered it to the Lord as a whole burnt offering. And he pleaded with the Lord to help Israel, and the Lord answered him. Great, we're getting there. Just as Samuel was sacrificing the burnt offering, the Philistines arrived to attack Israel. But the Lord spoke with a mighty voice of thunder from heaven that day. How cool is that? I want to see the movie. The Lord spoke with a mighty voice of thunder from heaven that day, and the Philistines were thrown into such confusion that the Israelites defeated them. It's good, eh? The men of Israel chased them from Mizpah to a place below Bethkar, slaughtering them all along the way. Oh, glory too. Samuel then took a large stone and placed it between the towns of Mizpah and Jeshanah, and he named the stone Ebenezer, which means the stone of help. For he said, "Up to this point the Lord has helped us." So the Philistines were subdued and didn't invade Israel again for some time. And throughout Samuel's lifetime, the Lord's powerful hand was raised against the Philistines. The Israelite villages near Ekron and Gath that the Philistines captured were restored to Israel. The Lord begins restoring everything back to the people that had been stolen, along with the rest of the territory that the Philistines had taken. And there was peace between Israel and the Amorites in those days. Samuel's leadership draws them back to the Lord and ushers in a victory and then a time of restoration and a time of peace. Samuel continued as Israel's judge for the rest of his life. Each year he travelled around, setting up his court first at Bethel, then at Gilgal, and then at Mizpah. He judged the people of Israel at each of these places. His role as the spiritual leader was to go and travel around and hear the cases that the people brought to him. How do we decipher the word of the law? How do we decipher what the Lord's instructions are in this specific case? And so he would bring wisdom and spiritual leadership and guidance to them in each of these places. He would travel around judging them. And then he would return to his home at Ramah, and he would hear cases there too. And Samuel built an altar to the Lord at Ramah. What a great story! A story of the Israelites coming back to the Lord, coming back to faithfulness, following their leader, getting a victory, winning a battle, getting everything that had been stolen restored to them, ushering in a time of peace. But what does it have to do with parenting? Well, to understand how parenting plays into this story, we have to understand some of the family dynamics at play. Because Samuel, you see, was a much longed for baby of an infertile mother. He was the son of a mother who made a promise to the Lord that if only she would be blessed with a child, then she would dedicate him back to the Lord for the whole of his life. That's his parenting heritage. If you don't know the story, Hannah is the name of Samuel's mother, and Elkanah is his father. And it's a time in history where men had more than one wife. Let's not go there. But Elkanah had another wife, and she had borne him lots of children, and Hannah was childless. And every year, because at the time, the people of God had their land and they built their lives in all of these very far out distant spaces, but once a year they would travel, the whole family, all generations of the family, they would take a big trip to the tabernacle once a year to offer sacrifices and to worship the Lord together as a family. And every year when Elkanah brought his wives and his children to the tabernacle on the big trip, and they would worship and they would offer their sacrifices, Elkanah's other wife would torment and tease Hannah because she didn't have any children. And Hannah was crying out to the Lord. And we're going to pick up this story right here. From 1 Samuel 1, Elkanah says, "Why are you crying, Hannah? Why aren't you eating? Why be downhearted just because you have no children?" Wait for it, best line in Scripture. "You have me. Isn't that better than having 10 sons?" Every husband in the room said, "Amen." "You have me. Isn't that better than having 10 sons?" We'll leave that there. Once after a sacrificial meal at Shiloh, Hannah got up and went to pray. Eli the priest was sitting at his customary place beside the entrance of the tabernacle. Hannah was in deep anguish, crying bitterly as she prayed to the Lord. And she made this vow. Wow, this is a big promise to make before the Lord. "O Lord of heaven's armies, if you will look upon my sorrow and answer my prayer and give me a son, then I will give him back to you. He will be yours for his entire lifetime. And as a sign that he has been dedicated to the Lord, his hair will never be cut." As she was praying to the Lord, Eli the priest watched her, and seeing her lips moving but hearing no sound, he thought she may have been drinking. "Must you come here drunk?" he demanded. "Throw away your wine." "Oh, no, sir," she replied. "I haven't been drinking wine or anything stronger, but I am very discouraged, and I was pouring out my heart to the Lord. Don't think I am a wicked woman, for I have been praying out of great anguish and sorrow." "In that case," Eli said, "go in peace. May the God of Israel grant the request you have asked of him." "Oh, thank you, sir," she exclaimed. Then she went back and began to eat again, and she was no longer sad. The entire family got up early the next morning and went to worship the Lord once more. Then they returned home to Ramah. When Elkanah slept with Hannah, the Lord remembered her plea, and in due time she gave birth to a son. She named him Samuel, for she said, "I asked the Lord for him." The next year, Elkanah and his family went on their annual trip to offer a sacrifice to the Lord and to keep his vow, but Hannah didn't go. She told her husband, "Wait until the boy is weaned. Then I will take him to the tabernacle and leave him there with the Lord permanently." Elkanah says what all good husbands say to their wives: "Whatever you think is best." Elkanah agreed. "Stay here for now, and may the Lord help you keep your promise." Wow. May the Lord help you keep your promise. So she stayed home and nursed the boy until he was weaned. When the child was weaned, Hannah took him to the tabernacle in Shiloh. They brought along a 3-year-old bull for the sacrifice and a basket of flour and some wine. After sacrificing the bull, they brought the boy to Eli. "Sir, do you remember me?" Hannah asked. "I am the very woman who stood here several years ago praying to the Lord. I asked the Lord to give me this boy, and he's granted my request. Now I am giving him to the Lord, and he will belong to the Lord his whole life." And they worshipped the Lord there. And then it goes on to say that Elkanah returned home to Ramah without Samuel, and the boy served the Lord by assisting Eli the priest. Each year his mother made a small coat for him and brought it to him when she came with her husband for the sacrifice. And before they returned home, Eli would bless Elkanah and his wife and say, "May the Lord give you other children to take the place of this one she gave to the Lord." And the Lord blessed Hannah, and she conceived and gave birth to 3 sons and 2 daughters. Meanwhile, Samuel grew up in the presence of the Lord. Samuel grew up in the presence of the Lord. Samuel grew up in the presence of the Lord. Why is parenting so imperative in not just your family, but our family, the family of faith? Well, the first imperative that I want us to take from this story is that our children actually belong to the Lord. It's a challenging thought that our children actually belong to the Lord first. Every child is a child of God first. And so what that means is whether we are parenting biological children in our homes or guiding those who are spiritually younger children in the family of faith, it's imperative that we always remember each child's DNA as a child of God first. Our children are on loan. God has entrusted us to care for his children, entrusted to our care to be raised as fellow image bearers of the God who created them. It's a sobering thought, and it sparks these questions for me. Will I and will we be brave enough as parents to dedicate ourselves to the kind of parenting which sees our children grow up in the presence of the Lord? Will that be the guiding principle of our parenting? That we would be the kind of parents that help our children to grow up in the presence of the Lord. What does that look like? Does that mean that we'll be prepared to say our yeses and nos based on the foundational truth as parents that our children need to be given every opportunity to grow up in the presence of the Lord, witnessing our sacrifices and our regular worship and our wrestle with Scripture and with belonging to the family of faith as we model what a life of faithfulness to the Lord looks like? And I think that understanding that the first parenting imperative is that our children belong to the Lord helps us with that. It helps us live open-handed. It helps us live open-hearted. It helps us look to the Lord first as the guide in all of our parenting. Because parenting imperative number 2 is that our children do need leadership. The story of Samuel leading the people of Israel to victory over the Philistines is one which demonstrates God's plan to give children, both natural and spiritual, strong and healthy leadership. Children need leadership or they go astray. Children need a hand to hold when crossing the road so that they don't get hit by a car. Children need a parent around to guide as we come into winter and you start to turn the heater on or the fireplace and light the fire and little hands go towards the heat, and they need a leader, a guide around to teach them that if they get too close to the fire, they'll get burnt. Children need leadership, and God's plan for children and for families is that they would have leaders. They would have parents to lead them. Children need constant, consistent reinforcement of the right values and authentic modelling of a godly life. And it's the same in the family of faith. We need godly, authentic spiritual leaders to turn to for wisdom and advice as we grow and mature ourselves. You know, this is imperative to the kingdom of God. It's not a we'll see what happens kind of thing. It's imperative, and it's imperative to the future generations of your family. Because, you know, Samuel led the people of Israel to that great victory. But I want to show you what happens next after the great victory. Let's go to 1 Samuel chapter 8. It says, as Samuel grew old, he appointed his sons to be judges over Israel. Joel and Abijah, his oldest sons, held court in Beersheba, but they were not like their father, for they were greedy for money. They accepted bribes and perverted justice. What a tragedy. Samuel's own biological sons grew up to become wicked, and it changed the whole course of God's plan for leadership of his children, the people of Israel. And so that brings me to parenting imperative number 3 that I'd love for us to take home with us today, and that is that our family is our first ministry. And I don't know exactly what went wrong, and I don't want to unfairly judge Samuel as a father because I wasn't there and I don't know all the details. And I know that Samuel was given to the Lord, and so he didn't grow up with his physical mother and father around him all the time. But I can imagine that maybe all of his itinerant ministry and travelling around to hear the problems of the people of Israel, and I'll get the team up, and to give wise counsel may have meant that he didn't spend enough time at home leading his own sons to become followers of the Lord. And this principle doesn't only apply to those of us who are called to minister at the church leadership level, it applies to every mum and dad who is tempted to value their own work or their career or their hobbies more highly than leading their children toward a life of following Jesus. It applies to every mum and dad who's tempted to believe that maybe earning more money or being able to outsource their children's spiritual leadership and development to somebody else is going to help them to live a life of faithfulness to the Lord. And I want to encourage parents in the room today. I want to encourage us as followers of Jesus, as those who are called to bring leadership to either our own children or to those younger than us in the family of faith. You know, I used to think that parenting little kids was hard. You know, those years where they say the days are long and the years are short and you don't get much sleep, and you sometimes wonder when you're a mum or a dad of little kids in the parents' room and you've moved heaven and earth, literally, to get everybody out of their pajamas and into some clothes that are appropriate for being in community, and to get their teeth brushed and get some food into their bellies and get them all strapped into their car seats and try to block out the shouting and screaming and yelling and singing of the Wiggles songs over and over again in the car on the way to church, and then unpack everybody and get out all the gear and get out the pram and then come into the service and really not get to take much of it in. You know, those are the years where you realize that church is not about what you get out of it, it's about what you're putting into it, which is what you are leading your children towards, even when you don't get to sing a whole line of a song or hear a whole sentence in a message. Anyway, I used to think that those were the hardest days of parenting, and I'm not discounting how challenging those days of parenting are. But then my kids got bigger, and I learned that there was a whole new challenge in parenting kids as they get older, and as they get into their teenage years, and as they get into their early adulthood years. And a couple of years ago, you know, Luke and I reference this often. We were on our sabbatical. It's a once in 7 year. It's a principle of a once in 7 year break away from your regular day-to-day activity to seek the Lord and hear from Him about what He's saying about your next 7 years of productivity in your life, what you'll invest your time, your energy, your money into. Anyway, in that period, Luke and I were doing whatever we could to hear the voice of the Lord into every aspect of our lives. And so we were in a church service, and there was somebody there with a prophetic ministry, and she prayed for us, and she prayed a whole bunch of things, and it's been really encouraging for us, lots of the things that she's said as we've progressed over these next 18 months to 2 years. But one of the things that she said particularly to me, because I'm a worrier, and I'm a worrier about my kids and about whether I'm doing a good enough job raising them. It's probably my number one worry. And she prayed for me, and she said, the Lord is telling you that you don't have to worry about your kids. The Lord is telling you that He's going to give you everything that you need. She said, how many kids have you got? I said, 4. she said, your 4 kids are all, actually, stop. Before that, she said, have you got kids yet? And I said, bless you. Thank you for telling me I look that young. Then she said, how many kids have you got? I said, 4. She said, each one of your 4 kids is unique and different, but the Lord wants you to know that He's going to give you everything that you need to parent your kids well in this next season. And they're all different, and they're all going to follow different paths, but the Lord wants you to know that He's going to give you everything that you need to parent your kids, and your kids are going to be fine. And it has been such an encouragement to me to remember through this, through this sister in the Lord, just a word from the Lord about the fact that my kids are actually His kids. They're His kids first. He wants them to turn out okay, better than I do. He wants them to turn out to follow a life of faithfulness to Him for their whole lives, even more than I do. And yet, He's invited me to be their leader for this period of their childhood. And yet, He's told me He's going to give me everything that I need by His power and in His strength, and that I don't need to worry. And so I just want to offer an opportunity as we wrap up this morning, that if there's anybody else who's carrying some anxiety about parenting in this next season, I'm going to get the team just to sing a song again, and you can stand and worship. But if you'd like to respond, Luke and I would just love to pray for you. If you have any of those concerns about parenting in this next season, we just want to be that voice of the Lord to you today, that the Lord will give you everything that you need because it's His power and it's in His strength. So church, why don't we stand? If you want to respond, come down the front, we'll pray for you. Otherwise, let's just sing this song and worship the Lord together.